So what inspired Ongolo? So I have been thinking of founding a blog for Africa back in 2018. And the problem I was trying to solve was threefold. First, I was frustrated by the mainstream media's portrayal of Africa, which seems focused on four different topics: corruption, crime, disease, and poverty. I call it the CCDP model. Now, my challenge to that is if Africa was such a dump, we would not have had colonialism for nearly 100 years. So clearly there was some value in this continent that people's ancestors saw many, many years ago, and suddenly the narrative is not positive. And that's something that has frustrated me immensely. It has frustrated me even more so because I have a theory about this. Western media's portrayal of Africa is no different from emotional abuse. Because emotional abuse is designed to undermine people's feelings of self-worth, and independence. And that is exactly what continuing the CCDP approach for Africa does. It reinforces the narrative that Africa is a backward continent and that its people are weak and unintelligent. And the reason I'm saying this is if Twitter can call out the President of the United States for promoting abusive behavior, then I think it's time that broadcasting bodies across Africa start paying closer attention to the news that filters into our homes and try as much as possible to filter out biased reporting. Now, I'm not saying there is no corruption, crime, disease, and poverty in Africa. My challenge is that this just paints part of the story. And it also, unfortunately, doesn't help us get out of that self-limiting belief that we have that we cannot compete with other countries on the global stage, and that has to stop. And the second point is that Africa remains relatively unknown. So I'm from Zambia, and I'm often asked the question if Zambia is next to Nigeria, because Nigeria has done a fantastic job of ensuring that the world knows who they are and where they are on the map. Back in the 90s, people of African descent were still being asked questions like, do people in Africa live in trees? Now, I'm sure you and I both know that our ancestors have long lived in homes, but the fact that people think that's an okay question to ask is shocking to me. I personally have had people say to me that Africa is a deep, dark continent, and I take great offense to that, given that everyone has broadband. And if you're really curious about what Africa is like, all you can do is Google, but people do not do that. So that's the reason why we need to solve the problem number one, which is the negative and often biased reporting of Africa, so that people can actually understand the multi-dimensions that constitute the continent that we know. And then lastly, Africans don't know enough about each other. So when I was frustrated with people non-Africans calling Africa the dark continent, I had to stop and reflect, because the reality is we don't know what our neighbors are doing. And I really wanted to get us excited about our own continent. And through this blog, I actually found out some really interesting things about Africa that I wouldn't have known before. So for example, in Benin, we have one of the world's leading palm oil labs in the world. And it's in Benin, which is a small country that I've never been to. And it wouldn't be high up, ideally, or it would ordinarily not be high up on my list of places to go to. But the fact that they're playing and competing with countries in Asia was really fascinating to me. And another thing that was interesting is palm oil actually originated from West Africa, but we have not made much of it. And instead, Asian countries have turned it into a $60 billion a year industry. And I think that we really need to try and capture back some of the Africa of yesteryear, where we were leading the charge on different things. Another fascinating fact I learned recently was that the oldest university in the world is not the University of Bologna, which everyone says is the oldest university and was founded back in 1088. But the oldest university is actually the University of Al-Qarawiyni in Fez, Morocco, which was founded by a woman actually back in 859, about 229 years before the University of Bologna. So there's a lot going on in Africa that we don't seem to know about. And one of the reasons why I wanted to found this blog was so that I can share as many of these stories as possible. So how will Ongolo do this? And that's the bullet points on the right side of the screen. So the first thing is I'm very keen to promote African success stories, because there is so much good work going on in the continent. And I think that we're far too modest at showcasing our success. So I would ask you if there are any amazing people that you've met or amazing companies that you think I should speak to, please get in touch and send me a note on hello@ongolo.com. The second objective is I would like to provide a more accurate depiction of the Africa we know and love. And this goes back to fighting point number one about mainstream media's portrayal. The third point was to promote African solutions, especially around innovation, thought leadership, and entrepreneurship. So I was really excited in my last interview to interview Dr. Leonard Wanchikong, who is a professor of economics at Princeton and is working on an initiative called the Pan-African Scientific Research Council, which has interest from about 200 scholars from 22 African countries and 10 non-African countries. And they're trying to figure out how to push innovation in Africa and from Africa. And I'm really excited to follow that story. And I hope to bring you some insights and some news as they progress. The other story that I covered was Madagascar's COVID organic solution. What was very interesting about this, and the reason why I wanted to have somebody from Madagascar on my show, is because as soon as Madagascar announced in April that they had found a cure, the entire world slated them. How dare this island of 20 million people, if that, thinks that they can come up with a solution for COVID-19. What's interesting is Madagascar has been doing medical research and producing herbal medicine since 1957. And 80% of endemic plants in the world are only found in Madagascar. So yes, how dare they? They actually have the means and the ability to produce medicines. And I really wanted to put that out there because there have been a lot of trials of COVID-19 in the West that have not worked, and yet no one is talking about them, but gave them the opportunity to actually trial. And we haven't done that for Madagascar. So I'm trying to create an equal playing field for Africa and Africans. And the only way we can do this is by talking about these stories. And the last point is about promoting talented Africans. We need to put our best people forward, especially for global roles, but we have to do that in a united manner. So on the 9th of June, the FT reported that both Africa and Europe are seeking to field one candidate for the WTO top job. But whereas Europe is more likely to achieve this, African Union is failing to convince Nigeria, Benin, and Egypt to unite behind one person. And it's times like this that I wish that this decision could be put forward to Africans